Yo, what is going on, guys? One more here, guys. A brand new Busch Gardens video. And after the last video, we kind of derived away from the Busch Gardens topic, but this time we're going to dive in, but kind of going over something kind of similar to the last video. We're going to talk about a park that is kind of in a limbo state, while also talking about a whole section of the current Busch Gardens Williamsburg park, which is the Sesame Street Forest of Fun. And just a little spoiler alert, if you don't know me and how I feel about Sesame Street Forest of Fun, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. Did you know that Williamsburg and the SeaWorld parks in Williamsburg, more or less, actually had the possibility of getting a third gate? Now you're wondering, Will, what do you mean by a third gate? Well, parks and sections are usually referred to as gates. So when you have Disney, you have the 4 gates: Hollywood Studios, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, and Magic Kingdom. Those are the 4 gates, and everyone talks about the 5th gate. Currently, Williamsburg has 2 gates: Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Water Country USA. So what would be the third gate? There's a park in Philadelphia and there's a park in San Diego called Sesame Place, based off of the Sesame Street characters, which we know are involved in the Busch Gardens Park today, both in Williamsburg and in Tampa. This idea is actually a really cool idea. It's the opportunity to build another park, not like a massive park, but it's a decent sized park that would be adjacent to Busch Gardens Williamsburg and actually share the gate that Busch Gardens uses. You kind of go to the same movements to get into the park, but some of the Fran's parking lot would actually not be there anymore. It would actually be the new Sesame Street Park, where it goes from the Pompeii area into Forest of Fun. That would be cut off, and they'd build it up so you really can't see Sesame Street from Busch Gardens, and you can't see Busch Gardens from Sesame Street. What was the plan? So there was actually some really cool plans, and just like last week, I'm able to do this more off the cuff because I actually know a little bit about this, but we are going to be reading a little bit from this article from BGW fans, but you don't know who they are and you're a Busch Gardens fan, go check them out. They're awesome. They are so up to date with all the information at Busch Gardens, and they leak so much information. So these plans were unraveled in 2018 that Williamsburg and SeaWorld were looking to build a third gate to Williamsburg, being Sesame Place. And it was going to be really interesting because it was going to be sectioned off. It had its own lands, kinda. It was the neighborhood, Central Park, and Seaside. It was also going to have like a little mini water park inside of it. So it's going to be a little bit of like a mini Busch Gardens and Water Country combined together. It's a great place for the kids. And I will say this about Forest of Fun. I've never denied that it's a great place for kids. It's a great place that Busch Gardens gets to be like, hey, you're bringing your kids, we got a whole place over here for them. Here's my problem, and we'll just go ahead and get into my rant for Force of Fun because I'm just eager to get on my rant. There's no reason it belongs in Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Like literally no reason. Like, okay, yes, SeaWorld bought out Busch Gardens. SeaWorld has some like theme park rights to Sesame Street, so they're involving that. It's great marketing. It's a lot of merchandise sales. It's a lot of money. And you know what? I can't get mad at the fact that it's about money. Because everyone likes money. I like money. You like money. We all like money. There's a flow to the park. I've often talked about it as you go through the park, you're going through the story of the old country. And the old country, the OG Busch Gardens. And as we're going back as it feels to the old country, I can't help but feel like when you have Sesame Street, it's just such a out of left field thing. It's just there. It's like an eyesore. It's like beautiful landscaping, all this beautifulness. Elmo's big head with a crown on it. Okay. And like I said, it's a great place for the kids, but we have Land of the Dragons, and there's more opportunities where they can build stuff for the kids without it having to be IP based. And they go, Will, you've always said Busch Gardens should be IP based. Yes, off their original IP, all stuff like Griffin, Loch Ness Monster, Tempesto, for Bolton, stuff like that. Not Elmo and his friends. And the Spooktacular, which thankfully they're separating that from Howl-O-Scream this year. So let's go through a little bit about what this park was going to be. You have the neighborhood. Now, if you've been to Magic Kingdom or Disneyland and you've been down Main Street USA, imagine that. A little smaller scale, a lot more colorful, and featuring Elmo characters, which a lot of dining and shopping options. So it seems like a pretty cool thing for kids who grow up watching the show. They get to go walk around the city that all the characters live in. And then you have Central Park, which is kind of weird what it would be. The Central Park is not really an area. It's more of just this design, circular design that's theorized to maybe be the carousel in the park because there was a carousel in the picture that kind of went along with it in the ride's concept art. And then you have Forest of Fun, which if you know, like I said, that's a part of Busch Gardens. And it would be the same Forest of Fun this rethemed, remodeled to kind of shape the rest of the park, but also it would be doubled in size. So you're talking about the drop tower, the water ride, the roller coaster, all those would remain, just a little rethemed just to fit with the new vibe of the whole entire Sesame Street place. And then you have Seaside, which would have had a few different like slide areas, a wave pool, and a large water play structure. So something like Water Country, I'd imagine like you take the wave pool and Rock and Roll Island and you blend them in two but then shrink them a little bit. That's essentially what Seaside would be. So why do I feel like they are pitching this idea to, James City County or the tops of SeaWorld trying to pitch this idea? Well, I think obviously it'd be great for Williamsburg. I think it'd be a great tourist attraction. And like I said before, where Disney would detract, I think, from Williamsburg experience, I think the Sesame Street, since it's already there in Busch Gardens, it's already a part of it. Everyone knows it's there. And I think having its own park to itself, I think it's a really cool place for the kids. I think it's so cool because when so many families go there for the historical stuff and Busch Gardens and they want to go ride the big kid rides, as you know, they would be referred to. And sometimes the kids, they're not really into the historical stuff yet, and they're not tall enough to ride the big rides, and they can only ride so many things at Busch Gardens. I think it gives a great opportunity for parents to go and be like, all right, kids, we're going here. Let's have a great day here. And so I think it's a really cool idea. I've always said the idea of Forest of Fun is not a bad idea. It's just terribly placed. It should not be in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. It doesn't have a place. But it's the idea of having a Sesame Street land in Williamsburg. Great. Yes, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think you should have it. We would lose a little bit of parking, but you still have the big lots. And let's be honest, Busch Gardens can make more parking. They have plenty of it. Now, crowd control, I think, would be a little weird. And to have her pitches where it wouldn't be right beside Busch Gardens, but more or less across the road, and they'd build more parking across the road, which I think is the more likely situation rather than them just literally building like this block between the Pompeii section and the Sesame Street Park and be like, all right, that's it. Here's the park, and you go through the same entrance. I don't know. I think you might go through the same entrance, and they might build like an underpass or an overpass. I do not believe that if this park ever gets built, who knows? It might never get built. It might get built. But if it were to get built, I don't believe it's going to be right next to Busch Gardens because that is a lot of parking they'd lose. And on these busy days like in June, July, May, August, going into October and December, you can't afford to lose that type of parking. Even though you have the overflow, it's going to make crowd control really bad, especially because you're going to have a lot more people trying to go to the trams. I do believe it would be on the opposite side of the road with its own parking area for families to go and park because while I believe it will be a very populated park, it's not going to be nearly as populated as Busch Gardens. Maybe more than Water Country because it probably used. I would imagine this park will be open year round. It's a great tourist attraction for Williamsburg. A lot of business brought to Williamsburg, and just a lot of awesome opportunities for Busch Gardens and for SeaWorld to really establish this kids-specific area. Because everyone talks about Busch Gardens doesn't have enough for the kids, which I always argue they have enough for the kids. It's just not like in-your-face elaborate. This would be their way of saying, you know what, maybe we don't have enough for the kids. So you know what? Here's a whole park for the kids. Here is an entire park, and the cool thing too, the absolute cool thing that they can do that's different from the Philadelphia park and the San Diego park, they can theme it differently. They can theme it to Europe. They can have like Elmo and his friends go to Europe, and this is their experience. Like, think about that. There's a really cool story opportunity because I'm all about telling a story with your park. And when you have Busch Gardens Williamsburg right there, and then you have Water Country USA, you can blend it too. Like, here's America, now they're going into Europe, or they're just in Europe, or they're just in America, and we're going to make it simple. But I think there's just so many cool opportunities that they have with this park and with the IP. I think it would satisfy everyone because I know the diehard Busch Gardens fans don't really like Sesame Street being there, but also we understand why it's there. This is a beautiful way of marrying. We don't want it there, but we understand why, both parties can be satisfied. And I can get that eyesore of Sesame Street land out of the park. Because let me just say, how much do you really see Busch Gardens talking about Sesame Street aside from Sesame Street specific posts? There's a lot of Sesame Street specific posts, yes. But how many do you see like they feature and other stuff? Not much. Like you'll see like the characters and stuff because there's like the little castle in the background. This is my pitch that I've always talked about. You get rid of Force of Fun, whether you build that other park or not, and you make it the Royal Jubilee. Because we always know about the big parties that they have to celebrate the royalty in England, and it's right outside of England. It's like going from England into Italy. You can make that the Jubilee and have it be a kid-specific area. It's still for the kids, but it's themed around England. and this big party, this big celebration where you can have these character actors come out, talk with the kids, because everyone wants to meet the kings, they want to meet the queens, the princesses, the princes. You can create this original IP. Like I've been saying, original IP. You can create all of that right there. And you can keep all the rides and just retheme them. I think it's awesome whether or not the Sesame Street land gets built. That's a nice little piece of land they've been using for rides and crowd control, so they shouldn't stop it. But if they get Sesame Place, make it a kid-specific area and call it the Royal Jubilee. Not the King's Jubilee, not the Queen's Jubilee, because that's always changing. The Royal Jubilee, just a party celebrating the royalty of England. I think the kids would really love it and really integrate them in the Busch Gardens experience from a very young age. The moral of the story is, I hate Sesame Street land inside Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I want it gone now! Whether we get the park or not, I don't know. It's just a cool theory to talk about. Another park that may or may not be coming to Virginia, more specifically Williamsburg, more specifically SeaWorld. It's really the Busch Gardens family, and I think there's just so many opportunities if they were to build it. But also, like I said, I think there's just so many opportunities they can do with that plot of land and not have it be Sesame Street. This was all over the place because I just really wanted to talk about how much I don't like Sesame Street land and Busch Gardens, but I wanted to have a more appropriate, more sensitive thing to approach that topic with. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that bell button down below so notified every single time I upload a brand new video to the channel. And also, I got a new song out, Feel Alive. So go stream my new song, Feel Alive, wherever you listen to your music. I love this song, and I'm so glad that it's finally out there in the public. And thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Will Morris, and I'm out. Peace.